Welcome everybody, and it's a pleasure to see you all for this Fireside special. Since we want to spend as much time with our guests as possible, I'll keep this intro super brief, and I will also say that this session will be recorded. So, my name is Anders Hallen, and I'm creative director here at Edelman, but I'm also co-founder of Deportivo, the Swedish creative PR shop that later was acquired by Edelman, and now is the foundation of the creative department here in London. So the first time that I met Jonathan was in Stockholm when he was CMO of My News Desk, which is this online newsroom. And the discussions with him became interesting pretty much immediately. Instead of, as would be the standard, talking about, profiling and positioning of the brand towards a business audience, we discussed how we potentially could use culturally relevant content in the actual newsroom platform, and then use that as a reason to speak. That meant we could go much wider, and we could use much more friction and drama, and we could also aim to be interesting rather than informational. Simply put, we could focus on generating earned attention, and then the hook back to the primary audience instead would be in a parallel and slightly later funnel. Why I'm telling you this, without first saying spoiler alert, is because we will now show you two case studies from jobs we've done with Jonathan. And since they both can appear very consumery, it's important that you have this background. In the first one, you will see that not only did we create an entire campaign to generate earned content, we actually did it for a completely separate brand that we then used for the My News Desk platform. And the other case is from Jonathan's current company, Sinch. And here we basically created a tech demo, but with this heartfelt purpose, building an earned core. So with that said, let's roll the films and then let's meet Jonathan Bean and Becky Wall. Thank you.
Hovding makes the world's safest cycle helmet, an airbag for bikes. But not enough regular riders know it exists. Meanwhile, people are getting injured and even killed every day. Here in London, things are reaching crisis point. To address this, we created a way for Hovding to do something extraordinary. Help prevent accidents before they happen. We reinvented the humble bicycle bell, upgrading a 100-year-old device with tech for 21st century streets. So when a cyclist feels scared or in danger, they can give a beep. Creating an instant record on the citywide map, posting a tweet, and sending an email straight to the Mayor of London's inbox, challenging him to take action on cycling safety. To make our bell, we partnered with Flick, the wireless smart button, giving a device designed for the home a life-saving new use. We then gave the upgraded button to 500 London riders to trial. They loved it. Millions more got to hear about it, and Hovding doubled sales of their revolutionary helmet. Most importantly, the data generated not only helps cyclists plan safer journeys, but is being used now by the Mayor's office to improve cycling safety.
We've got councils in the Mayor's office coming back to us now and saying, OK, we see that there is an issue. So they're seeing the map and they're drawing up action plans because of things on that map.
Plans are also in place to bring Give a Beep to Brussels and Amsterdam. So now, as well as saving lives when accidents happen, Hovding is helping to make them less likely in the first place. Something we should all give a beep about.
We use our phones to connect 24/7. But it comes with a big cost. Hurtful comments, negativity, all in the palm of your hand. Sinch is a B2B cloud communication platform, handling messaging for some of the biggest tech brands in the world. They could only imagine how much negativity was reaching people using tech that was created for good. They decided it was time to fight back with positivity. Sinch teamed up with Mental Health America, a charity helping people live mentally healthier lives. and created Text for Humanity, the world's first texting switchboard, where you send a positive text to a stranger and receive one in return. To sign up, users just had to text join, give their first name and location. Then they can send and receive positive texts that also become auto-generated artworks, and what started with one text became something more. It connected people all across the world. Its potential was recognized by English actor and mental health advocate Stephen Fry. Responses were sincere and moving, and Text for Humanity continued to grow and grow.
A new texting platform
Soon, over 70,000 positive texts were sent, totaling over 1 million words of positivity, with texts sent and received in 85 countries and over 50,000 engagements on social media, plus an earned media reach of over 470 million. It helped Sinch generate over 300% more business leads. And in an age of online negativity, we showed that positivity can be spread just as fast.
Thanks, Anders. So I'm joined today by Jonathan, if you want to pop your camera and yourself off of mute. So I'm Becky, I'm one of the Associate Directors here at Edelman. I've been here about 6 years, and we're here today to talk about what creative bravery means in B2B. And I think it's a really interesting question, and obviously Jonathan's got some great views on this, as Anders talked about in the sort of intro. So Jonathan, obviously we've heard a lot about your background, the relationship you've built with sort of Edelman and Deportivo over the years. I think the first question I'm really interested to ask you is sort of why B2B is seen as such sort of the boring cousin, shall we say, of B2C marketing, and whether it's deserved, whether B2B marketing really does have to be boring, or whether there are sort of opportunities and ways in that might be more interesting.
Thanks, Becky. Yeah, really delighted to join you guys here in this intimate setting of like-minded communications and marketing professionals and some Edelman folk. Is it boring? I think the whole B2B thing, or the separation between B2B and B2C, goes back to the old ways of buying, right? It's the way that we used to do B2C and B2B marketing before digital, I would say. Whereas, B2C was always about mass communication, about advertising, TV, all those different mass communication methods. And B2B was always about long sales cycles, trade shows, men or women in suits with their briefcases going to trade shows and doing deals with people, right? And taking them golfing or whatever you did. And I think fundamentally, like all things, right, the marketing industry takes a while to catch up on changes, particularly changes in technology, a little bit like the legal industry and the political and regulatory frameworks that surround us. And so for me, B2B buying it's still a human you're selling to, right? So what I often say to the teams is, you're selling to humans as selling to humans, right? We might have them beautifully mapped out in different personas these days or things like that, but you are selling to a person, and you need to put your product or your service in front of that person and differentiate. And then the way they access those products is digitally today. So I think that's your opportunity, really. This breakdown between B2C and B2B is a bit of a fallacy, I would say. It's people selling to people.
I think we'll come back to that question about the digital evolution in a second, because I think that's a really interesting one, particularly in the way that some companies have interpreted that in terms of sort of where they take their marketing and communications. But firstly, I would just like to level set around the question of what creative bravery almost means to you, and sort of how you've sort of employed that philosophy, in your work today, and what it constitutes for you, I suppose.
Yeah, I just, creative bravery, it's like, it's like a phrase or a term born out of, some sort of creatives navel gazing there in London, right? Let's discuss creative bravery. I think what's more useful actually is just to take a little bit of a step back and okay, what's marketing all about actually? What is the whole marketing communication mix all about, right? And for me, most people that have studied any type of marketing, the whole 4 Ps, right? Product, place, price, promotion, and all that sort of stuff. What is it in the modern context today, right? For me, that product piece becomes a solution, right? Every B2B company has some sort of solution. The place things all becomes about access, right? It becomes about, where am I accessing this product? Am I accessing it, online, digitally, physically, however we're doing it. The price thing all becomes about value, right? It's not just sort of commodity pricing. It's about the value you're delivering and how you're messaging against that value. And then the promotion bit, where I would say that creative bravery plays in, if you want to use that frame, that term, is about education. So the promotion bit for me has become about education, and I think a lot of B2B brands have this education job to do now, and that's done in very many different ways. And for me, there's there's a lot of hygiene factor education to be done, and call it content marketing, or call it thought leadership, or however you want to dress it up. There's a lot of good stuff out there that we do at Sinch, whether it's ebooks, whether it's white papers, whether it's reports, whether it's webinars. I still think there's a place for them, because that is some really good educational type of content that you can provide value to your customers or prospective customers for. But I think if you take it sort of, okay, what about the creative bravery lens? That's your opportunity to really educate your customers, your prospective customers, and also your talent, your internal talent, on, okay, what are your company's values? How do you stand out? How do you differentiate? And I think that's where, everyone's doing white papers, right? Everyone's doing webinars, everyone's doing, and even though your designers are going to say ours are so much better because, our design is so much more beautiful on it, or our form converts so much better than this. I've got a 0.0007% conversion rate better this year, this week than last week, because of this amazing growth framework I'm working with. Okay, that's all good, and we should all be doing that stuff and improving. But the creative element really kind of can differentiate your brand.
I think that leads nicely back into this digital question in many ways. So you talked about sort of the shift from these B2B events. No, we've seen that in such sort of great droves this year in particular, or the last year in particular, when all of these events were cancelled, and there was sort of a need to look elsewhere in terms of where you're investing a lot of that B2B investment. But I think digital can be interpreted in probably myriad ways, but two that sort of spring to mind here. And one is that kind of, as you've talked about, that kind of focus on marketing automation, the drive into using digital tools to optimize that, driving for your webinars, driving for your maybe LinkedIn adverts. But then there's also the other sort of avenues of digital that perhaps B2B companies aren't as sort of adept of taking up. I'd be really interested if you talk a little bit more about that kind of notion of digital, and how you see that sort of exploding, almost the divide, shall we say, between B2B and B2C.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I really I'm so surprised that we're still using this term digital in the year of 2021, and as though it's some sort of foreign, thing, this new thing, right? I think if we were talking about it in 2004 or 5, that's allowed, right? But the fact that we're still talking about it in 2021 is despicable, I would say. And I think, why are we doing that? It's because there's a whole bunch of 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and 60-year-olds that are in kind of so-called executive positions in companies today that weren't really brought up with this, don't clearly understand it, are a little bit threatened by some of these, people that are digital natives, many of which are their kids. I learn a lot from my daughter, who's like an expert YouTube editor. So we kind of try and build up digital as this kind of weird new thing, rather than the old world. And I think you need both, right? It's not a question of you just need, you need a lot of the hygiene factors of a modern marketing machine today, which includes, marketing automation, conversion rate optimization, SEM, SEO, that whole suite. You need that. But just assume, I think, that all of your competition, if they have the ability to get the right talent in place, right, which I think for a lot of B2B companies, not just on the tech side, but every company, their key mission is talent acquisition. Can I get the right talent? And so everyone's going to be getting this great talent in the door, right? You're all going to be putting in pretty much the same type of frameworks in place. You're going to have the same type of MarTech in place. You're hopefully going to have some good narrative and some good messaging, and all of that. So you're going to have that framework in place. but in order to differentiate yourself truly from the competition, you do need to catch attention. You do need to win hearts and minds. You do need to build your brand, and you know, I think that's vitally important, because today, and I don't know if it's just because I'm in the technology world, often many technology products are the same. We love to talk about our differentiators, used to be called the USPs, right? And how amazing we are. But fact is, most technology brands, it's pretty much the same stuff we're flogging to customers. But we, you know, we use people like you to try and say that it's different.
And that's absolutely why we're here. So I guess if MarTech is the baseline, and sort of having that investment in talent, having that investment in tools and the hygiene factors that you talked about in terms of your content is kind of the base where you have to play. Is that where you see sort of earned creativity coming in and sort of stepping over and above that?
Yeah, I think it's I think it needs to feed into each other, right? I think you know, I think what creativity and creative programs give you the ability to do is to try and put your company in a context, right? What context do you exist in today? And I think Anders talked about it a little bit in the intro. Like, what we've tried to do previously is to say, okay, we are a software provider, or we're a cloud communications provider, like I am at Sinch. But actually, you know, the mission at Sinch is really about simplifying life by bringing all people and businesses together, right? You know, we serve, you know, 147 billion interactions a year. So we reach basically every person on the planet, you know, 14 times. Now that's quite a powerful responsibility. So you think, okay, what context do we operate, you know, in here? And we saw it through the lens of a mobile phone. Our product is often delivered through a mobile phone in terms of a message or a voice or a video, you know, interaction. Okay, what effects do mobile phones have, you know, on people's lives? And that's when we started to explore that together with you guys. We said, oh, well, actually, there's this huge trend that there's a lot of online negativity out there. People aren't feeling particularly healthy when they're interacting with their mobile phones. Is there something that we can do to fight this kind of online negativity? And that's where, you know, the idea of Text for Humanity was brought up. So I think it just allows you to, you need to have all those hygiene factors in place. You need to build a good, you know, marketing machine, but the creative element, you know, comes on top of that and allows you to really explore the context that your company and your product and service operates within. And I think that's really powerful, basically.
And I suppose that context, going back to your earlier point, sort of allows you to serve to people on the level of their humanity rather than perhaps, you know, who they are in a business context.
Yeah, and isn't that a fascinating like topic? That's a whole nother webinar, I guess. But it's like are you who you are in a business context, right? Or are you a person, you know? And I've oscillated between the two, right? When social first came online in the early 2000s, I was very much, no, this is my social type of persona and this is my business persona. As I was building the, you know, my career, this is how I wanted to be, you know, portrayed in a business context. Then there was a long period of time where I was like, no, completely transparent. I was doing a sort of software scale up. So I was, you know, you know, what you saw online was basically, you know, the same as I was operating in a business. Now, you know, when I'm CMO of a publicly listed company, you know, billion, you know, dollars in revenue, it's slightly more challenging to take that sort of complete transparent approach, because, you know, whatever I say, you know, sometimes or can affect the share price of the company I work for. So it's a little bit more, you know, a separation of the two. But I do think this kind of this authenticity and this transparency is extremely important, both for individuals in a company and also, you know, for your brand. And I think, just as we're being joined by some external people today and some Edelman people, it's very, very vital to engage people internally on these different issues.
I think that, yeah, as you say, there's a whole sort of identity crisis to unpack there that I'm not sure we've got the time, or perhaps personally don't have the qualifications to do so. But I think it's a very interesting question, particularly as we look at the sort of generational shift happening in the cohort of buyers, I suppose, that we talk about from a B2B context. I think you talked about our sort of non-digital natives shuffling up the the hierarchy, and obviously some younger generations that are sort of more perhaps akin to expressing their identity as unsplit, shall we say, in social contexts, is sort of coming to the fore.
Yeah, I think it's vital. I think it's vital just to embrace all of the new, and it doesn't happen just in tech or marketing or whatever. I mean, you take the airline industry. I've got some friends that are pilots in their 40s and 50s, and some of them are particularly bitter because there are younger pilots that are cheaper than them, that have more skills flying more modern aircraft, that can teach them a lot, and it wasn't as good as the old days, so to speak. Others of them really learning from these new young guys and thinking it's amazing. And I think it's completely the same in business and and technology. I just say to people in my team, look, the only thing that differentiates me is that I've made a few more mistakes, so I've got a little bit more experience. I've made lots of mistakes in my career, and hopefully we can learn from some of those. But I think it's vital that we stay curious, and then I think as leaders, our responsibility is to put talent in place, and help that talent help you achieve whatever goal that you've got. And the same goes for when I'm deciding, what agency or creative partner you're working with, right? You want the best sort of creative brains on an issue. It doesn't necessarily need to be the most senior person.
Mm. So we talked a lot about having the basics in place, having sort of the talent, the skills, the automation to make sure that you're sort of doing the basics well. I suppose a lot of the people on here are probably curious about what's the balance there between sort of the bold, culturally focused, creative work that you do, and that kind of bread and butter work that is essential to making sure people understand your product. Would you say there is sort of a hard balance between, a hard sort of percentage shift between the two, or what does it flux over time?
Yeah, it depends, right? So it's so company dependent on where you are, how digitally advanced you are or not, and where your marketing organization, is. And I think also how well respected it is as part of a go-to-market strategy. I often sort of joke with my colleagues that when I joined Sinch a few years ago, marketing was what I call the stickers and events people. That's what we did, right? We helped these very important salespeople carry their briefcases down to an event and close deals. We might, organize a nice little sort of champagne reception for them and give them some stickers and stuff like that. Now, fortunately, the opinion within Sinch at least is completely transformed. The vast majority of our business now comes from digital and marketing channels. We're a key part of the go-to-market strategy. Now, if I'd said to my leadership, well, I'm going to achieve this just by doing sort of huge creative campaigns when they didn't even know what PR was, then I think I'd have some problems. But by saying, look, we're going to do proof of concepts here. We are going to, we're not going to spend the majority of our budget on this. We're going to spend a small part of our budget. And I think that's what's, to say, it's only 5% or 10% of your of the budget, right? And then if it's successful, we can actually grow this and do that. So taking it step by step, and proving ROI. Listen, the big brands have bigger budgets to play with, and the B2C brands will have bigger budgets to sort of play with there. But I think some of the work that can be done with the B2B brands is super interesting work, particularly if you can combine it with a little bit of technology or product and service, which is there.
Absolutely. So more of a sort of a return to base in terms of how do you, for all the B2B marketers on this call today, what are the sort of advice or guidance or maybe mistakes and experience you can share from the sort of long history of working in this space? What does it take to sort of get to great and brave work? Assuming you've done the hard yards of getting your salespeople and your organization on board.
So I think, this is where the whole leadership thing comes in, really. I think I'm a big one, and I think a big study on Google was done a few years ago and came up with the whole concept of psychological safety, right? Establishing that safe place for teams to operate in, no fear of failure and everything like that. And I think realize as a marketing or communications leader, right? Yes, the buck stops with you. the buck stops with you. You take responsibility. Well, hopefully you should give your team the successes and let them shine when you succeed. But if you fail, you should take the blame. That just goes with the job. But I think a little bit of us, we do need to take ourselves just a little less seriously, right? We are not curing COVID-19. We are not doing heart surgery, cancer research, or even flying aeroplanes that I talked about earlier on. We're doing marketing, right? We're doing communications, and yes, it is important and it is interesting. And our, if we sell a bit more stuff due to our stuff, or we keep customers, or we do talent, that's a great thing and something to be proud of. But no one's going to die if it completely drowns. Are we going to lose our job? Well, maybe if we do, we can move on to a better company that, So I think we should stop being so afraid as marketing and communications people. What's to lose? But of course, you need to establish this area. It's very easy for me to say that, right? And I understand if people are in context where they're living in an organizational culture where everyone is, looking at each other, and if you make a mistake, you're out. Well, then my advice to you would be leave the company that you're in, go work for a company that's a bit more, innovative and appreciates your talents, basically. But I think just take responsibility as a leader, establish that psychological safety, and talk to your CEO, talk to your CFO about the benefits here of brand building. People will, even in B2B, right? B2C brand building, I think, is understood a little bit more, but B2B companies, you need to talk about, okay, well, our mission is, of course, to lower cost of customer acquisition and to increase customer lifetime value. That's the two things, right, in B2B companies that you want to do. Well, in terms of brand building, what are you looking at doing? You're actually looking at decreasing your cost of customer acquisition over time, because the bigger brand you've got, the more organic traffic that you've got, the cheaper it will be to acquire new customers. So it's about talking that financial and management language and connecting it to the initiative you're doing now and explaining there will be a lag. It's not, tomorrow. We do Google AdWords and Facebook for tomorrow, right? But over time, we don't want to pay for this. We want to create loyal fans. And then what are the other payoffs here? The other payoffs are very much, internally. I can tell you a sort of a quick story that you didn't have on that case slide. Well, before we did Text for Humanity at Sinch, we had 300 people a month applying for jobs at Sinch. Now we have 6,500 people a month applying for jobs at Sinch. Now, I hate to tell you it's not all down to Text for Humanity. I'd love to say it was, but but I think it definitely helped, right? And then when you get, as much as I love, getting attention on whether it's the Today Show or the Telegraph or the BBC or wherever you guys, help me get into, I'm equally as pleased if I get a comment from an employee or a Slack message from an employee saying, you know what, this really made me really proud of working for Sinch. That type of, I'm a huge believer in what's so-called the service profit chain, which is around, creative, loyal and engaged employees create loyal, engaged customers, which create a fantastic business result. So I think that's also, as a leader, you've got a responsibility to communicate, this is why we're doing this. Lower cost of customer acquisition, increase employee engagement, and also sometimes when you do things like this, you scare the hell out of the competition as well.
Which is always a bonus.
Yeah.
We've had an interesting question come in on the chat from someone participating today. They've asked when and how do you bring in your internal teams on board and ideas when you've got perhaps a slightly wild campaign that's coming out of its comfort zone? They've talked about, presenting ideas in their final stage, and sometimes, people not forming the emotional attachment that might be required to the idea that comes from sort of the process itself. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, super great question, Christina, right? Who asked that question? Yeah, and something I don't think I've perfected this particularly, well. I think I generally keep the idea and the creativity to a relatively small team in my team, because I don't want to distract. There's so much engagement that goes on with creative campaigns because it's so exciting and it's so engaging. But if I have all of the marketing department focusing on this one thing, then nothing else, none of those hygiene factors that I talked gets done. So generally what I do is I'll work with a small team in my brand and comms team, on this particular idea, involve those people and get a small enough team, but with diverse opinions to feed back on creative ideas and the way we're going, right? And then, stage by stage, you will kind of tell this to the organization, both the wider marketing organization and the organization in general. So I kind of tease them, so at big company kickoffs, I'll say, and we've got a really good campaign for Q2 or whatever, and it's called, X. With a nice graphic, and they're, oh, I want to know more. Oh, well, you will know more when the time is right. And then, you'll synthesize it with maybe the leadership team. This is what we're planning to do. But you don't go ask their permission. This is what we're doing, right? This is what we're doing. This is what we believe in. These are the results it's going to deliver as well. Don't run away from the results, the very tangible results. But I think marketeers generally, or some marketeers, are a little bit afraid. They're a little bit sort of asking for permission. Can we do this? And I would say, don't ask for permission. You can ask for forgiveness if it goes wrong.
That's a great takeaway. In the spirit of talking about barriers, I suppose, and getting approval is one of them, or getting forgiveness perhaps is the biggest one. But are there other barriers that we should be considering, and sort of what are your thoughts on what the biggest ones might be that people might have to overcome in sort of getting to great work or getting it over the line?
Yeah, I think you've got to. It's a team effort, right? I mean, I think that's what's very, very important. It's always a team effort. I mean, so we're a technology company. We always want to involve our technology in what we do. So it's vital that that those people are involved. So get the technology and engineering teams involved and giving their opinions. Get the business people that need to create results involved and on board. And then also get the creative and brand builders involved. But like, my worst nightmare is to have a bunch of, black polo shirted or uber creative sitting in a room coming up with an idea without input from the business people, the planners, the strategists, the engineers. If once you combine all of that work, there's some brilliant thinking that comes out of that, because each of them are brilliant, individuals. I think that's one barrier. The other barrier is metrics. Don't run away from metrics. Make sure you know how you're going to measure this. You know what success looks like. Communicate that and discuss that with your agency partners to say, these are the challenges we have internally. How can you help us sort of shape that? I think that's another one. And also, constant communication. It's funny for us, right? Sometimes working in the communications industry or marketing industry, we should be good at communication. Sometimes I think we're not. Because we work in the industry, we take it for granted that we are good communicators. So I think, constant, communication across teams, client and agency side is very super important. So I think there's some of the barriers and just being honest and open with each other. I think, Anders always appreciates me, or, Stefan and Matthias I've worked with before as well. It's like, you're honest with each other, right? You're honest when campaigns go right. You're honest when they go off track a little bit. And I think that's very important. Particularly from senior leaders, but also from hopefully all the teams working on these things.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's a temptational ways to make everything look like a great success, isn't it? And sometimes experimentation doesn't always meet with great results, and I think you need to be able to learn from the rough and the smooth in a lot of those contexts, which is hard to do as PR people, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
We had a great question about metrics as well. Yeah. So business people often obviously speak about success in terms of numbers. We've got, we saw some of those fantastic skyrocketing numbers of the case film at the start. But how do you quantify, creativity in a campaign, and how do you prove that it has worth, it has real meaning and value to the business?
So I think one of the questions I would put back, I will answer that question in a second, but one of the questions I put back was, should you quantify creativity? Should creativity be actually quantified? But if I am trying to do that, so if I take my logic around, this initiative, which is part of a wider brand building initiative, right, will result in, you know, increased branded search for your company, in increased web traffic. Over the long term, it will increase, you know, it will increase sales, all right, and leads in the business. So you can quantify it from your funnel that you have. You can quantify it from your usual PR metrics that you use. You can quantify it from, if you're doing a brand tracker, right, where you compare competition and share of voice. If you go out and do qualitative surveys, you can do that. I think it's very difficult on a campaign basis. You know, agencies are brilliant at coming back with all sorts of metrics, particularly great agencies that make great case films like Edelman. About, you know, you can put lots of different metrics that kind of demonstrate that the campaign has been successful. But I think one of the biggest challenges is that there's often a lag effect, right? Your company will benefit from this campaign or initiative or piece of creativity over a number of years, and, you know, to give you an example, we're redecorating all of Sinch's offices right now, right? And you know, in each of those offices is a canvas with some of those 85, you know, texts for humanity, right, that we've engendered from all over the world. When I go into that meeting room, right, you know, it's amazing. There's a big, nice canvas with a text for humanity. It's going into an art exhibition partnered with Facebook and IBM in Stockholm and New York later in the year. Now, how do I quantify that? Sorry, I can't go to my CFO and say I've done that. But, you know, we doubled website traffic last year for Sinch as a brand. Now, that's not all down to Text for Humanity, but Text for Humanity definitely played into that, you know, overall achievement. So I think you can quantify the campaign or the initiative. The creativity in it, I think, is very difficult to qualify. All right, another question maybe.
Yeah, well, they're flying thick and fast now, yeah. And I think it might be prudent for us to open it up to the floor for a few more. But I think we've got one person who's really curious about that relationship with the sales team, and, you know, what happened after the launch. You know, how did the sales team respond? How did you really build on that relationship with them? I think they're talking specifically about Text for Humanity here, but I think you've probably got a few lessons in terms of sales team engagement from your career as a whole.
Yeah. No, I think that I mean, I started my career, I am a salesperson, right? I believe in technology companies, you either sell stuff, you build stuff, or you are stuff. And I try and avoid being just stuff. But don't tell my HR and finance teams, otherwise they'll fire me. But they help people build and sell stuff. And I think, you know, you are part of you know, with your relationship with sales, you need to say, we're going to run a whole bunch of initiatives this year, right? Some is going to be direct lead generation. Yes, you're going to get your white papers, your form downloads, your, you know, everything like everything like that, your Google ads, your SEO. We're going to do that and do that. We're also going to show our technology in action in a creative way, like Text for Humanity or the other, you know, campaign you saw. And, you know, then I was able to say, okay, well, website traffic has doubled, right? Or website traffic has gone up this much. You know, leads this month compared to that month have gone up. Can I say it's exactly that person hitting that landing page? No, I can't. But I can, you know, tell you, you know, a campaign that we've got planned for now, which you know, you'll soon know about in a few weeks' time. You know, centers around the importance of a conversational designer in a business, right? We used to talk about copywriters. Sinch is a messaging company. Messages are conversational on all these channels. What are we doing now? As a follow-up, we're doing a sort of a landing page with a whole story around what a conversational designer does for a company and their reality. And this person has played a key part in this campaign we're about to launch. So I think you need to continually, you know, measure or continually follow up on, you know, this is how this campaign helps us build the brand, helps us, you know, drive leads into the business. And I think, you know, most pleasing with sales is when I get, you know, emails or Slack messages or whatever from the sales team going, hey, customer X loves Text for Humanity, or often, God, did you see that comment on LinkedIn from competitor X about Text for Humanity? They're really scared. They think it's so I think that's also, you know, important. But again, it comes back to regular communication and building. You know, I hate to see companies where marketing, you know, you guys think that PR is the poor relation to marketing, right? And believe me, in companies, marketing is often seen as the poor relation to sales, right? These amazing salespeople that go close deals, and actually building this go-to-market machine together, product, marketing, and sales is your combination is super important. All right.
I think so. That's probably an interesting question, and there's one area that we didn't get to around partnership, and I think I'd be curious about what are the most important partnerships for people in your position, or people sort of working into your position need to build? I mean, we talked about the agency and we've talked about the sales team. I don't know whether there are any other partnerships that you think are really, really critical and formative to being able to get to this quality of work.
I think one partnership is with technology. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm a technology company, but I think engineers, they think differently, right? To us creative, more extrovert, people. I was, connecting with one of the developers that we've got in our team yesterday, a new developer, and I said, please don't be shy in just giving your opinions, because, often these business people, whether they're, women executives like myself, or, just, super serious business people, think in one way, you think in a different way, which is super good. So I think the engineers and technologists are very good. I also think, partnering with finance as well. Don't be scared of finance, right? Partner with them and explain the percentage of budget we're using on this versus all the other campaigns that we're doing, what we're trying to achieve, the long-term goal of building a brand to reduce cost of customer acquisition over time. And then of course you've got to, so I think those partnerships are pretty crucial. But we haven't talked a lot about sort of purpose, or, if you're going to go down the purpose-driven, area, understand the context that your company is in. Don't just, understand, don't just, do it for, for purpose sake. And a good example, right, is, we partner with Mental Health America as the case shown on, so we partnered with Mental Health America to discuss, online negativity. Well, hey, once we launched the campaign, there was a thing called, COVID-19, hit us, and we needed to do mental health, training and awareness for Sinch. So that partnership became even more vital. So yeah, that was important.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm afraid we are at time. We have maybe 1 minute left. I don't know whether there's anything, sort of parting thoughts you'd like to leave before we sort of hit the final minute.
I'm just trying to read the last question, right? These younger tech-savvy people in creative concepts to gain insights early in the ideation set. Now, I think be brave, right? Is it really worth doing your job if you're not brave? I mean, it doesn't really matter about doing brave campaigns, right? It could be, initiative or an email you always wanted to send, or whatever. God, life's too short not to be, brave. And brave, I guess, is very relative. It's a relative term, right? What brave is to one person, it's something different. So do this. Be brave, be curious. And I think maybe my parting shot would be, understand the context that your product or service gets used in today. There is a wider context. There is a societal, context for you to address with your product or your service. So if you understand that, and then explore ways about how you can use that, but don't give up on the marketing basics, right? You have to have that in place too. And remember, I think as a marketeer, we often lose sight of that. Your job, yes, is to get more customers and to power the growth in your business. But you also have a huge responsibility, the people in your business, to both retain the talent in your business through what you do, and to gain new talent in your business. And I think creative bravery or creative campaigns or whatever can really set your company apart and attract and retain that talent compared to competition as well. So that's often forgotten on our search for growth and new customers. So don't forget that. It's been super good joining you, but thanks for the opportunity to share a few thoughts.
Thank you so much for a fabulous discussion, Jonathan. And thank you everyone for joining. I know we're a couple of minutes past, but there will also be a podcast on this topic coming out, and we'll be sharing recording for anyone who couldn't make it or who would like to revisit some of the thinking. But thank you so much for everyone's time. I hope you enjoyed the session. And if you have follow-up questions, please do try and send them through, and we'll endeavour to get them answered in one way or another. Thanks so much.